Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This week, we are spanning, well, pretty much the entire chaotic spectrum of human knowledge and global events.
It's a huge range.
It really is. We're going from imaging the wreckage of an asteroid collision 25 light years away, all the way to dissecting the really complex legal and ethical questions around an $830 billion AI evaluation.
So if you're looking for that shortcut to being comprehensively well-informed, but without, feeling drowned by the fire hose of daily news, you are definitely in the right place.
Exactly.
It is an enormous stack of material we're working through this week, and our mission, as always, to just extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, connect these seemingly disparate events.
And find that through line.
And find the through line, exactly, to deliver a comprehensive understanding of the most pressing stories. We've organized this deep dive based on a hierarchy of relevance, so we're prioritizing fundamental scientific breakthroughs first.
Right. Space exploration, then we'll get into the lightning-fast acceleration of technology and digital governance.
And finally, the high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering and global finance that will define our current moment.
Okay, let's unpack this monumental collection of knowledge. We're starting where the scale is largest: space, science, and the fundamental physics and biology that govern, well, everything. I have to begin with a genuinely breathtaking piece of astronomical detective work.
This one's good.
It really is. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration's, that's NASA, of course, their Hubble Space Telescope, which is now in its third decade of service.
Still going strong.
It's achieved something truly unique. It has given us a literal front-row seat to a cosmic cataclysm in another star system.
This is a truly groundbreaking observation from Hubble. It's directly imaging catastrophic asteroid collisions in the Fomalhaut star system.
And in cosmic terms, Fomalhaut is what?
It's right next door, only about 25 light years from Earth. And why this is so significant is that it's the first time astronomers have ever witnessed a major impact event of this kind outside of our own solar system in real time.
So that shifts this from just, theoretical modeling to real observable chaos.
Precisely.
We're basically watching another solar system go through its violent teenage years. What specific details did the researchers actually capture?
Well, the lead investigator, Paul Kalis, described seeing the sudden emergence of a bright point of light that was, and this is the key, demonstrably absent in images captured just a few months prior.
Wow, so a before and after.
A direct before and after. This point of light then immediately ballooned into a substantial debris cloud, which they tracked over several weeks. But what's truly fascinating is that the observations identified two distinct debris clouds in close proximity.
Two clouds, not one.
Two, which suggests a very intense gravitational interaction and not just a single random bump between two objects.
The finding of two clouds, that sounds like a really crucial detail. Does that challenge the existing models of how planets form?
It does, in a way. I mean, older, simpler models often treated these massive collisions as sporadic, isolated events. A giant impact here, a big smash there.
Right, very random.
Very random. But witnessing the results of what appears to be a violent interaction between massive objects that results in twin debris fields, that suggests a more complex, gravitationally dynamic environment. We are truly witnessing the chaotic beginnings of planetary systems.
Where these planetesimals, the building blocks of planets, are still undergoing these fierce, destructive interactions.
Exactly. It's a much messier and, frankly, more interesting picture.
And what do these real-time observations allow scientists to extrapolate about the Fomalhaut system itself? You mentioned planetesimals.
It gives them a crucial metric for estimating the system's structure. Based on the size and the speed of the resulting dust clouds, the current analysis suggests that the Fomalhaut system harbors approximately 300 million of these planetesimals.
300 million.
That's the estimate. Each one roughly 37 miles in diameter. So that's just a massive reservoir of colliding material.
It confirms that planetary formation is a violent, protracted, and, ongoing process even after the main planets have settled into orbit.
It's not a clean one-and-done event at all.
Okay, but here's where it gets really important for the future of astronomy. If you have all this dust and debris flying around, how does that complicate the search for actual stable exoplanets?
It's a massive technical hurdle. A huge one. Debris clouds that result from these catastrophic collisions, particularly when they're reflecting the light of a nearby star, can easily be mistaken for an actual stable exoplanet.
So the data can look exactly the same, at least at first.
Initially, yes, the signature is almost identical. So distinguishing between a temporary dust cloud and a permanent orbiting world requires long-term monitoring.
You can't just take one snapshot.
You can't. Fortunately, both Hubble and now the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST, are committed to monitoring the evolution of this particular dust cloud for the next 3 years.
Ah, so they'll watch it dissipate.
Hopefully. That should provide the kind of data required to distinguish between transient debris and actual planetary candidates. It's a long game.
It always is in astronomy. Now, speaking of monumental space missions designed to gather incredibly detailed data, we also have an update on the survey and physics of the Early Universe Telescope.
SphereX.
SphereX, yes. This is a mission that's not looking at local collisions, but attempting to map the entire ancient universe.
And this mission has truly grand cosmological ambitions. NASA's SphereX space telescope, which was launched earlier this year, has successfully completed its first infrared all-sky map.
The breakthrough here is the technical precision, right? It captures the cosmos in an astounding 102 different narrow wavelengths of light.
That's the key. 102 wavelengths.
Okay, but 102, that sounds like technical overkill to a layperson. Why is that specific number of wavelengths so invaluable compared to a typical survey that might use, say, 10 or 20?
It moves beyond simple imaging into powerful chemical and cosmological spectroscopy. So by using 102 specific wavelengths, many of which are invisible to the human eye and fall into the infrared spectrum, SphereX can simultaneously measure the redshift of galaxies.
So how fast they're moving away from us.
Exactly. And at the same time, it can determine the chemical composition of those light sources. It's essentially collecting a full chemical fingerprint and a speed limit sign for every single object it sees.
A fingerprint and a speed limit sign. I like that. So how does it manage this systematically across the whole sky?
It's an absolute machine of efficiency. SphereX orbits Earth approximately 14.5 times a day.
Wow.
And it captures a staggering 3,600 images every 24 hours. The plan is to conduct 4 complete all-sky scans over its 2-year primary mission duration. The sheer volume and detail of this data, it's considered invaluable for reconstructing the universe's history.
So what are the primary scientific goals here? What puzzle pieces will this data help astronomers fit together?
Well, there are 3 main goals. First, exploring key events in the early universe, specifically that period of rapid inflation that occurred fractions of a second after the Big Bang.
The moment that set the stage for all cosmic structure.
That's the one. Second, mapping the 3-dimensional distribution of galaxies across the deepest reaches of space. And third, and this is crucial, charting the distribution of key life-forming elements.
Things like water, carbon dioxide.
Water, CO2, methane, the raw ingredients for life across the vastness of the cosmos.
So it's an unprecedented cosmic inventory. It's mapping the very start of the universe and cataloging the scattered seeds of life at the same time.
Precisely. And this pursuit of mapping the invisible, well, it brings us to the ultimate cosmological mystery, dark matter.
Okay, let's dive into the unseen. We know dark matter makes up most of the mass in the universe, but we can't see it because it doesn't interact with light.
Right. It's gravitationally present, but optically invisible.
And now, some theoretical work suggests that the ripples in space-time gravitational waves could be the tool to finally reveal its location.
That's the theoretical breakthrough. Recent work suggests that when massive black holes merge, the gravitational waves, or GWs, that they emit may carry detectable fingerprints of the dark matter surrounding them.
Fingerprints? How so?
The idea is that the presence and specific configurations of dark matter near those black holes would subtly influence the waveform that future space observatories record.
Okay, so we're not seeing the dark matter directly, but its massive gravitational influence changes the signature of the black hole collision. How exactly does that work?
Think of it like a sound being muffled by a massive unseen blanket. If a black hole is immersed in a dense cloud of dark matter, let's call it a dark matter halo, that mass will absorb some of the energy from the merger.
And that changes the wave.
It slightly alters the frequency and the amplitude of the gravitational waves. Now, current ground-based detectors like LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, and Virgo are excellent for smaller black hole mergers.
Not for this.
But this particular theory relies on studying massive, distant mergers, which would require future space-based detectors to get the necessary sensitivity and the duration of measurement.
It's a very elegant concept, though, turning a noise signal into a dark matter detector.
And this research connects directly to some pretty speculative work regarding primordial black holes.
These are the ones hypothetically formed just fractions of a second after the Big Bang.
That's right. Some scientists propose that these ancient small black holes could actually be the primary candidate for dark matter itself.
So dark matter isn't some exotic particle. It's just a universe full of tiny, ancient black holes.
That's one of the leading theories. And if this gravitational wave fingerprint model proves correct, it could fundamentally reshape our understanding of the universe's structure and the distribution of all mass within it.
From the invisible universe, let's pivot back to Earth and the visible engineering innovation happening at NASA. We're seeing massive strides in aerospace technology, driven largely by the pursuit of fuel efficiency and, of course, cost reduction.
That's correct. At NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center, they are testing a new, large, subscale aircraft designed for complex flight research.
Subscale meaning not full size.
Exactly. The core motivation here is cost effectiveness. Conducting research with this large, flexible subscale model is vastly more economical than using traditional, full-sized crewed missions for evaluating new concepts and flight control systems.
It's like a highly advanced, very expensive model airplane.
In a sense, yes. A very, very advanced one.
And a major element of that efficiency push involves radically rethinking wing design.
Absolutely. We have a fascinating collaboration between NASA and Boeing on what they're calling the Integrated Adaptive Wing Technology Maturation Project.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but they are focusing on creating much longer, narrower, and higher aspect ratio wings. These designs significantly enhance fuel efficiency because they reduce drag and improve lift.
But those longer, more slender wings introduce a major and potentially catastrophic challenge for flight safety.
They do. The challenge is aerodynamic instability, specifically a phenomenon known as wing flutter. Because these wings are designed to be long and flexible to maximize efficiency, they become inherently prone to uncontrollable, destructive oscillation in flight, if not managed correctly.
So how do they solve that? You can't just make them rigid. That would defeat the purpose.
No, you can't. Engineers are using extensive wind tunnel tests and computational fluid dynamics to develop very complex control systems that actively dampen these oscillations, mitigating the risk of wing flutter and making these highly efficient wing designs safe and viable for the next generation of airliners.
It's amazing. From the largest scale of physics, let's go now to the smallest scale of biology. We have several incredible scientific nuggets detailing our understanding of life itself, specifically aging and the inner workings of the brain.
On the crucial topic of extending human health span, researchers have found a novel way to slow aging inside our cells by enhancing mitochondrial energy production.
The mitochondria, right? The literal powerhouses of the cell.
Exactly. So what researchers did was genetically modify mice to boost a specific protein that is critical for bolstering mitochondrial function.
And what was the result?
The resulting increase in energy output, so better production of ATP, which is the cell's fuel, led to remarkable improvements in vitality, better muscle strength, and a healthier distribution of fat tissue in the test subjects.
So it's not just about slowing aging, but actually improving function as you age.
It's about systemic cellular rejuvenation. The increased energy output correlates directly with a significant reduction in oxidative stress and chronic inflammation, which are two of the major biological mechanisms linked to cellular aging and disease.
And this research presumably offers a potential pathway for human interventions.
It does. It suggests we might be able to revitalize the body's natural energy machinery and slow that degradation process. It's a very promising avenue.
That seems like an enormously promising path. And on the brain front, we've got a massive leap forward in observing neural activity in a way that is far less intrusive.
This is a remarkable, non-invasive breakthrough in neuroscience. Scientists have developed a bioluminescent tool that allows brain neurons to emit light autonomously.
Autonomously. So no external stimulation needed.
Crucially, yes. This means researchers no longer need to rely on invasive laser microscopy or implanted electrodes to observe neural dynamics over prolonged periods.
So you can literally see the neurons light up as they communicate.
In real time, yes. This autonomous light emission is driven by a natural chemical reaction, similar to what you'd find in fireflies, involving luciferin and luciferase enzymes.
And the practical application.
It promises to greatly enhance our understanding of how the brain processes information and functions under both normal and pathological conditions. It provides critical and much less disruptive insight for studying complex neurological disorders like Alzheimer's or epilepsy.
And finally, a delightful scientific detail. The persistence of biodiversity and the fact that we don't even know what's in our own closets, much less the rainforests.
It's a wonderful irony, isn't it? The American Museum of Natural History announced the discovery of over 70 new species this year.
Okay, that's impressive.
But here is the kicker. Many of these species, including bizarre new insects, rare mammals like the long-nosed mouse opossum,
Marmosa chachapoya.
that's the one, and even feathered dinosaur specimens, they were identified not through field expeditions, but by new analysis of existing specimens already held in the museum's collections.
They were just hiding in plain sight in a drawer somewhere.
Precisely. The opossum, which was named after the pre-Columbian Chachapoya culture in the Peruvian Andes, was literally found in a cabinet.
That's incredible.
It just underscores the power of applying modern technologies and fresh research eyes to old collections, reminding us that there's a vast biological richness that still needs protection and documentation.
Absolutely incredible work across the entire fundamental science board. From cosmic collisions that took 25 light years to reach us, we're going to pivot now to the speed of human innovation. And nothing is accelerating faster than the $830 billion artificial intelligence race. When we talk about acceleration, we have to start with the sheer scale of the AI explosion. And you can really see that represented by the numbers attached to OpenAI. The figures are, frankly, destabilizing in their size.
They set an entirely new benchmark for valuation. OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, is reportedly seeking to raise $100 billion in a new funding round.
$100 billion.
And if they're successful, this round would value the company at a staggering $830 billion.
$130 billion. For context, that's more than the GDP of many developed countries.
It is. And this massive influx of capital is intended to fuel their enormous research and development efforts, and crucially, to purchase the necessary massive computing infrastructure required to train the next generation of large language models.
And that $830 billion valuation isn't just based on some future potential. The consumer appetite for this technology is proving its immediate market value right now.
That's right. The ChatGPT mobile app, which only launched less than 3 years ago, has already hit a milestone of $3 billion in consumer spending.
$3 billion in just 31 months.
Within 31 months. That trajectory makes it one of the fastest-growing applications in history. It demonstrates the unprecedented public adoption and willingness to pay for generative AI tools.
It's moved AI instantly from a niche technology to a household staple.
In record time.
So when you see that level of growth, the established tech giants, they have to react defensively to maintain market share. Meta Platforms, Inc. is making a massive strategic pivot.
A huge one. They're moving away from relying on external models and toward proprietary technology.
So they don't want to be dependent on OpenAI or Google.
Exactly. Meta is hyper-focused on reducing that dependency. They are currently developing 2 highly strategic proprietary AI models that are set for release around 2026.
And what do we know about them?
Well, the first is codenamed Mango, and it's dedicated specifically to cutting-edge image and video generation. The second is Avocado, which is intended for advanced text generation and complex coding applications.
Mango and Avocado. I love the code name.
Right. This shift just demonstrates that proprietary AI models are now viewed as the absolute key to future technological leadership and, well, sovereignty.
Moving from the technology itself to the societal and political implications, we're seeing this striking trend where political authority seems to be merging directly with high-tech power.
The revolving door.
The ultimate revolving door. The example of former British Chancellor George Osborne is perhaps the most illustrative case of this phenomenon.
It certainly highlights the symbiosis.
Yeah.
George Osborne has taken on a significant role at OpenAI as managing director and head of OpenAI for countries.
A position with enormous global influence potential.
Enormous. And in addition to that, he is also heading the Internal Advisory Council for Coinbase.
The crypto exchange.
Yes. This reflects a broader, accelerating pattern of highly experienced, recently retired British politicians migrating directly into the executive and advisory ranks of major American tech giants.
So this raises the critical new authority question. We're essentially watching a talent exchange where political savvy is being commoditized by companies that are now valued higher than many nations' GDPs.
That's a great way to put it.
What specific value does someone like Osborne, with deep experience in treasury and international policy, bring to a company like OpenAI?
Well, the value is not just general management. It is navigating the geopolitical and regulatory maze. Osborne possesses deep knowledge of national legislation, trade agreements, and critically upcoming international regulatory frameworks.
Like the European Union's AI Act or the nuances of GDPR compliance.
Exactly, the General Data Protection Regulation. He can help OpenAI preemptively shape their product development and market entry strategies to minimize regulatory friction and maximize global market acceptance.
But the concern that critics raise is whether these tech leaders, backed by political experience, become de facto authorities.
Right, guiding or perhaps circumventing the traditional democratic regulatory structures that are currently struggling to keep pace with AI development.
It's the ultimate blurring of lines between governance and enterprise. And speaking of governance and enterprise, let's look at two major pieces of news regarding corporate accountability in the digital marketplace. Instacart is facing some scrutiny.
Yes, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, recently reached a settlement with Instacart after accusing the company of using misleading promotional tactics.
What kind of tactics?
This included promoting free delivery while still layering on mandatory non-waivable fees and failing to adequately clarify that free trials of their Instacart Plus subscription automatically rolled into paid memberships without sufficient opt-out notice.
The classic subscription trap.
A very common one. But beyond those typical subscription tricks, there's a more serious concern about their use of AI to set the price of essentials, like groceries.
Yes, this is about their proprietary Eversight tool.
Correct. This technology uses advanced AI algorithms to facilitate unannounced real-time pricing tests. The criticism is intense. Critics, including leaders from economic think tanks, are deeply concerned that this automated fluid pricing strategy may unfairly heighten grocery costs for consumers.
This gets right to the heart of algorithmic transparency and equity. If an AI is setting the price of bread or milk, doesn't that risk amplifying social inequality?
How so?
If the algorithm identifies and exploits financial vulnerabilities in specific demographic regions or income brackets.
That is the central ethical dilemma. The opacity of algorithmic pricing, especially during a period of high inflation where household budgets are already severely stretched, generates deep suspicion. It poses a significant risk of dynamic pricing, unfairly penalizing the most vulnerable consumers based on data points they can't see or control.
It demands a serious regulatory response regarding fairness and transparency in essential goods pricing.
It absolutely does.
Now, on a completely different governance front, Apple is making a controversial move regarding its massive developer base globally.
Yes, Apple, which is the gatekeeper for approximately 28 million developers globally, has implemented a controversial new clause in its developer program license agreement.
And what does this clause do?
It essentially grants the company the right to act as a debt collector. It gives them the right to reclaim funds directly from developers for any outstanding charges or fees Apple believes it is owed.
Wow, that sounds like a significant power imbalance shift, especially for smaller developers.
It introduces a new layer of financial vulnerability and uncertainty. Developers now have to worry about unexpected withdrawals or fund seizures if Apple disputes a charge or believes they have outstanding fees.
So it's widely viewed in the industry as Apple just reinforcing its absolute control over its ecosystem and cash flow.
Yes, and this is happening amidst increasing regulatory pressure globally that's aimed at loosening that very control. Finally, in this section, let's talk national independence and technological sovereignty. We saw China make a definitive move to secure its critical infrastructure away from foreign dependency.
That was a pivotal and really symbolic step. China replaced the U.S. software controlling its national power grid with a homegrown solution called Tianquan.
And they reported it's actually better.
They proudly reported that this domestic software is 14% faster and more efficient than its American counterparts. This aligns with a massive national push for technological independence and control over sensitive infrastructure.
And this independence drive is almost entirely spurred by the geopolitical reality of high-performance semiconductor restrictions imposed by the United States.
Absolutely. The U.S. export restrictions on high-performance AI chips have forced the hand of major Chinese tech companies, including giants like Huawei and Alibaba.
So they have no choice but to build their own.
They have to. They are now investing staggering sums in domestic AI alternatives and chip production to counter those trade policies. This highlights a rapid and strategic shift in the global semiconductor landscape, with nations strategically seeking self-sufficiency at all costs.
And if that domestic data wasn't secure enough already, The cybersecurity landscape this year has been terrifying.
Hmm.
What are the latest figures revealing about the scale and the source of the threat?
The alarm bells are just ringing across the industry. We logged a staggering 2,563 data breaches by October of this year alone.
Just staggering.
And the sheer scale of the incidents is illustrated by one prominent breach of the Chinese surveillance network, which compromised approximately 4 billion individual records.
4 billion records. It's an incomprehensible loss of data.
It is. Furthermore, analysis shows that organized crime is responsible for over half of these data breaches.
So it's not just state actors.
Not just espionage, it indicates that sophisticated financial motivation is driving this massive and, frankly, existential threat.
4 billion records compromised. That statistic alone underscores the urgency of this digital crisis. Moving now from the digital battlefield to the military and diplomatic front lines, let's explore the geopolitical fault lines cracking across the globe. The situation in Europe remains critically complex, particularly regarding financial support for Ukraine. European Union leaders did manage to approve a major financial lifeline,
They did.
but the division within the bloc over Russia is starkly visible.
It really is. The EU agreed to provide a substantial 90 billion loan to Ukraine, which is absolutely vital for maintaining the nation's financial stability over the next 2 years during the ongoing conflict.
So that signals clear solidarity.
On the surface, yes. However, the internal division was starkly highlighted by the unresolved issue of frozen Russian assets. They did not agree to utilize the 200 billion in frozen Russian central bank assets for Ukraine's aid.
And that failure to act on the frozen assets, that was the real sticking point, wasn't it?
It was the crux of the disagreement.
Who was leading the opposition and what was their rationale?
Well, the opposition was led prominently by leaders, including Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and the rationale is manifold. Legally, seizing sovereign assets sets a very dangerous international precedent.
And economically?
Economically, they fear retaliation against their own assets held abroad. Orban, in particular, argued that the complete seizure of assets was an economic dead end for Europe.
And Russia's position has been firm on this.
Very. Russian President Vladimir Putin has firmly stated that any assets seized unjustly would ultimately need to be repaid by the nations involved. This disagreement just underscores a clear complexity and differing risk tolerances among EU member states.
On the military front, Russia continues to claim the upper hand in the conflict.
Right. Putin recently reaffirmed that Russian forces are advancing on all parts of the front.
And Ukraine's ambition for closer Western ties is hitting some roadblocks.
That's the diplomatic reality. Ukraine's aspirations for full membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, are being actively restricted.
We've seen pushback from several key NATO nations.
We have. Key members, including Slovakia and Hungary, along with the United States, have indicated that Ukraine's admission to NATO is simply not currently on the agenda.
What are the concerns they're citing?
The main ones include the high security risks associated with admitting a nation that's actively engaged in a conflict, and the need for improved bilateral relations with certain allies like Hungary before any advancement toward alliance talks could be considered viable.
Moving across the globe, U.S.-China tensions remain structurally high, with flashpoints around Taiwan and strategic infrastructure in Latin America. The latest arms deal with Taiwan elicited a very fierce response from Beijing.
It was a stern and immediate reaction. The approval of an $11.1 billion U.S. arms sales package to Taiwan prompted China's defense ministry to issue a clear warning, threatening to take forceful measures in retaliation.
And Beijing views these sales not as defense assistance, but as a direct violation of its sovereignty.
And a threat to regional stability, further hardening the diplomatic impasse.
We also see that strategic tension playing out in the Western Hemisphere, specifically concerning the control and access to the critical maritime choke point of the Panama Canal.
Yes, the sale of 2 strategically important ports of the Panama Canal is currently stalled due to these geopolitical concerns. These ports are owned by the China-linked conglomerate CK Hutchison Holdings.
And the dispute centers on who gets the majority stake.
Exactly. It centers on Beijing's insistence that a government-owned entity, China COSCO Shipping Corp., be granted a majority stake in the sale.
And Washington views that as a direct security threat, right?
Absolutely. U.S. officials regard allowing Chinese governmental control over this critical canal infrastructure as a direct national security threat. It's complicating the U.S.-Panama security partnership and has effectively halted the negotiations.
It just demonstrates the constant low-grade chess game being played over vital global trade infrastructure.
It is. And that expanding influence is manifesting elsewhere in the Pacific, too, far from the mainland.
We're talking about Micronesia.
Indeed. There is rising alarm among U.S. defense analysts regarding the rebuilding of a World War II-era airfield on Wolai, an island in Micronesia, by Chinese firms.
And they see this as part of China's broader strategy.
They view this activity as part of China's persistent effort to expand its influence and project power in the strategically vital Western Pacific region, demonstrating a methodical approach to establishing regional logistics hubs.
Let's shift our focus to Latin American sovereignty, where resistance to U.S. foreign policy is a consistent and vocal theme.
The situation in Venezuela remains extremely tense, particularly regarding oil. Oil workers mobilized in large numbers against what they perceive as U.S. aggression and economic sanctions.
And President Nicolás Maduro has been defiant.
He declared that Venezuela is free and will continue to produce and trade its products globally, despite the international pressure that has, frankly, crippled their economy.
And this mobilization has regional diplomatic support, which adds weight to Venezuela's defiance.
It absolutely does. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum publicly called on all Latin American nations to unite against potential U.S. intervention in Venezuela.
And she advocated for diplomatic solutions.
Strongly. She also condemned the offensive rhetoric coming from the U.S. regarding migrants and border security.
Now, the politics of Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado have drawn controversy far beyond her domestic political struggle, specifically around the Nobel Peace Prize funds she received.
This is a really complex international story. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange filed a formal complaint with Swedish authorities against the Nobel Foundation.
A complaint about what?
He's arguing that the $1.18 million prize funds awarded to Machado constitute a gross misappropriation that may enable war crimes.
That is an extreme accusation. What is the basis for connecting a peace prize to potential war crimes?
Well, Assange's complaint centers on Machado's stated political intentions. He cites her pledge that, if she were elected president, she would move the Venezuelan embassy in Israel to Jerusalem.
And he's arguing that this action is what violates the spirit of the prize.
He argued that this alignment with foreign policies he views as potentially conducive to conflict and contradictory to Alfred Nobel's vision of peace should disqualify the use of the prize money.
And there were other criticisms as well.
Yes. Russian officials also link Machado to foreign destabilization projects aimed at undermining the Venezuelan government, underscoring the deep geopolitical division her candidacy represents.
That is a staggering intersection of political finance, human rights, and diplomacy. Moving back to Europe, judicial independence is under serious attack in Poland, once again highlighting the difficulty of maintaining a unified EU legal framework.
The European Court of Justice, or ECJ, delivered a significant and highly critical ruling that Poland's constitutional tribunal is in breach of EU law and fundamentally lacks judicial independence.
What were the specific concerns?
The ECJ cited serious concerns regarding the tribunal's composition and the appointment of judges, insisting that all EU member states must adhere to common EU values and the supremacy of EU law in specific areas.
Now, this issue stems from the previous government, but the new pro-European government is still struggling to fix it, right?
That's the political complexity. This ruling followed the Polish tribunal's 2021 declaration, asserting that the Polish constitution was superior to certain EU laws.
And that was under the Nationalist Law and Justice Party.
The PiS party, yes. And although they've been ousted, the current pro-European government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, is stymied. They're unable to fully reverse the judicial reforms because the judges appointed by the previous administration are still sitting on the tribunal, actively resisting efforts to align Poland's legal system with EU standards.
It's an ongoing, deep institutional crisis.
It is.
On the diplomatic front, the United Kingdom has named a new face for a critical posting in the United States, signaling some stability amid all this global churn.
Yes. Christian Turner has been appointed the new UK ambassador to the United States, succeeding Peter Mandelson. Turner brings nearly 30 years of public service and diplomatic experience to Washington, D.C.
And this appointment comes at a time when U.S.-UK relations are navigating some very complex global challenges.
Everything from major trade negotiations to coordinating responses to geopolitical tensions in the Pacific and in Ukraine.
Finally, we're seeing some radical defense debates emerging, particularly in Asia, where long-standing policies are being challenged by modern threats.
This is a major policy shift. A senior advisor to Prime Minister Sana Takaichi suggested that Japan, a nation that has adhered to a strict non-nuclear policy since World War II, may need to develop its own nuclear weapons.
That is an extraordinarily provocative suggestion.
It is. And it stems from questioning the reliability of the U.S. nuclear umbrella amid escalating regional threats from Russia, China, and North Korea. It could potentially force a massive reevaluation of Japan's long-standing defense doctrine.
Meanwhile, Russia is proactively strengthening its alliances in the global south, specifically across Africa.
That's right. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov confirmed significantly enhanced strategic partnerships and trade growth with African nations, including Egypt and Tanzania.
And he pointed to a significant increase in trade.
A 50% increase in trade turnover since 2019, emphasizing Russian investment in energy, infrastructure, and technology offerings, actively countering Western criticisms of their approach on the continent.
At the same time, Belarus is reinforcing its military defenses.
Yes, in response to increased NATO military exercises near its borders, which just signals a palpable rise in regional tension across Eastern Europe.
The global political landscape is clearly moving faster than ever, driven by fear, ambition, and shifting alliances. When we come back, we'll look at the immense economic stress this chaos is putting on consumer wallets and national debt ceilings. The pace of global economic shifts is accelerating, and nowhere is that more apparent than in Japan, which has just made a massive monetary policy pivot that surprised economists worldwide.
This is truly a landmark shift. It marks the end of an era of ultra-loose monetary policy. The Bank of Japan, or BOJ, raised interest rates to 0.75%.
Which is the highest level seen in the country since when?
Since 1995. This is a monumental move aimed at combating persistent inflation, which has been driven primarily by rising import costs, particularly food prices,
Which have pushed inflation rates above the BOJ's target level.
for an extended period.
So for an economy that has spent decades battling deflation, this rate hike must have sent shockwaves through the Japanese financial system.
It has. The market immediately responded. We saw the yield on 10-year Japanese government bonds surpass 2%, reflecting the market's reaction to this definitive policy change.
So how are markets viewing this?
Well, this action is viewed positively by Asian markets as a sign that Japan is finally addressing inflation. But it also underscores the intensity of global inflationary pressures that are now affecting even historically low interest rate economies.
And it has major global implications for something called the carry trade.
Huge implications, as investors unwind decades of debt built on near-zero Japanese rates.
And globally, consumers are feeling the crunch, which is showing up dramatically in retail data. People are prioritizing essentials over discretionary spending.
That caution is very visible in the UK. Retail sales there have fallen for the fourth consecutive month.
Fourth consecutive month. That's highly unusual.
It is, even factoring in seasonal variations. And this decline occurred despite retailers offering significant Black Friday deals to entice shoppers.
So it signals that high inflation and rising costs are causing consumers to aggressively prioritize essential purchases.
It reflects dampening consumer confidence and a real fear about future cost increases.
Germany, the powerhouse of the Eurozone, is seeing a similar caution, but it's expressed as a surge in savings rather than outright cuts.
The behavioral economics here are fascinating. The propensity to save among German consumers has reached its highest level since the 2008 financial crisis.
Wow, and what's driving that?
This saving surge is primarily driven by deep-seated fears of sustained inflation and profound uncertainty over the future of retirement funding.
So not great news for retailers.
Market research firms studying this trend characterize the findings as not positive news for the upcoming holiday shopping season. It suggests this financial reluctance will likely continue well into the new year.
And adding to that financial stress, let's talk about the spiraling cost of essential services, specifically U.S. healthcare, where consumers face increasingly difficult trade-offs.
Health insurance costs in the U.S. continue their relentless rise, placing massive strain on household budgets. This forces consumers into these very difficult financial trade-offs.
So people are being forced to choose cheaper plans.
Many individuals are compelled to seek cheaper insurance alternatives. But these plans almost invariably come with significant compromises.
Like what?
Either severely reduced coverage, much higher deductibles, or limited access to specific healthcare providers. It's a painful choice between ensuring short-term affordability and risking long-term financial exposure to unforeseen health issues.
Now let's look at sovereign finance, particularly U.S. debt holdings, which reveals a complex geopolitical shift in investor confidence and strategy.
We've seen a noticeable drop in U.S. Treasury holdings by major foreign entities. China, in particular, has been strategically scaling back its holdings of dollar-denominated assets.
And crucially, increasing its gold reserves instead.
Exactly. This pivot raises serious questions about the long-term sustainability of U.S. debt and signals a reduction in reliance on the U.S. dollar as the sole global reserve currency.
So who are the primary foreign creditors now that China is scaling back?
Japan is currently the largest foreign holder with about $1.2 trillion in U.S. treasuries.
And after Japan?
The United Kingdom, holding $877.9 billion. China's strategic pivot reflects a clear desire to reduce exposure to dollar fluctuations and prioritize greater economic self-sufficiency and diversification through commodity-backed assets like gold.
On the ground in Latin America, resource wealth continues to fuel massive illicit economies with catastrophic environmental consequences.
The sheer financial scale of illegal mining in Peru is staggering. The sector generated approximately $3.355 billion within just 1 year.
$3.5 billion.
And this illicit income has profound negative implications. These illegal operations are systematically devastating the Amazon rainforest, threatening critical biodiversity,
And fueling organized crime.
simultaneously fueling organized crime syndicates, posing a severe and often violent challenge to governance and environmental protection in the region.
Finally, two major domestic policy shifts in India and Argentina reflect ongoing workforce struggles linked to inflation and economic restructuring.
In India, the parliament approved the Government Rural Area Maintenance Grant, or the GRAM-G bill.
And this new legislation replaces a long-standing program.
It replaces the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, or MGNREGA program, signaling a significant shift in rural employment policy.
And how was it received?
Although the government believes it streamlines aid delivery, it met with stiff opposition. There's concern over the new structure's ability to provide adequate social security and employment.
And in Argentina, President Javier Milei's radical labor reforms are meeting massive public resistance.
The protests across Argentina were so massive and widespread that they led to the necessary postponement of the debate over President Milei's labor reform bill.
And the goal of these reforms?
The proposed reforms aim to introduce significantly more flexible contracts and reduce union powers.
Which reflects the deep discontent among the populace who are struggling with sky-high inflation rates and deteriorating living standards.
The government is now forced to address public anger without completely abandoning its planned economic austerity goals. It's a very difficult position.
The economic picture is a tightrope walk for households and governments alike, demanding painful policy pivots. When we return, we'll move into Section 5, covering climate stress, social justice, and the long-delayed reckoning of the Epstein files. The climate crisis continues to manifest in severe, catastrophic events around the world, making the necessity for global resilience painfully clear. We saw devastating loss of life recently in North Africa.
In Safi, Morocco, the city was hit by catastrophic flash floods that claimed the lives of at least 37 individuals, marking the deadliest flooding disaster in the country in over a decade.
And the intensity and rapidity of the event just overwhelmed local defenses.
It did, and this tragedy immediately raised uncomfortable questions about infrastructure preparedness.
Right, especially ahead of a major international sporting event the country is set to host.
Yes. Viral videos began circulating online, raising concerns about whether the stadium set to host the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations, or AFCON, in Morocco, are adequately prepared to handle such severe, destructive weather conditions.
The tragedy just underscores the urgency of addressing local climate resilience and infrastructure modernization in vulnerable regions.
It certainly does.
Beyond localized disasters, the long-term threat of glacial melt is intensifying, putting major population centers at severe risk of water scarcity in the decades to come.
The projections are truly alarming. Scientists forecast that thousands of glaciers could disappear annually by mid-century under current warming trajectories. Annually. This creates severe water scarcity risks, particularly for heavily populated regions that rely on glacial meltwater runoff for agriculture and drinking water.
Like the Himalayas and the Andes Mountains.
Exactly. This affects the water supply for millions and simultaneously increases secondary hazards like floods and landslides downstream.
And globally, climate promises appear to be undermined by confirmed super-emitters continuing to pump out the most powerful greenhouse gases with apparent impunity.
That's right. Satellite data has confirmed the continued presence of large, highly concentrated super-emitting methane plumes linked directly to state-owned oil companies.
Specifically Petrobras in Brazil and SOCAR in Azerbaijan.
Petrobras and the state oil company of this Azerbaijan Republic, yes.
Why is methane such an urgent, high-priority concern compared to the long-term struggle against carbon dioxide?
Well, methane is a greenhouse gas that is significantly more potent than carbon dioxide over the short term. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, requires a 75% reduction in methane emissions from fossil fuels by 2030 to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius.
And these companies aren't complying.
Despite climate targets, both Brazil and Azerbaijan have failed to respond adequately to alarm notifications from monitoring organizations. SOCAR's emissions, in particular, were reportedly tripling after the last major climate conference.
Even deep-rooted cultural traditions are feeling the squeeze of warming temperatures.
That is a subtle yet poignant societal detail. Ethnographers are noting that the traditional imagery and expectation of a white Christmas is becoming increasingly rare and challenged.
Especially in places like southern Sweden.
Particularly in southern Sweden, where snow cover is becoming sporadic. This warming trend is forcing local communities, like the official hometown of Santa Claus in Rovaniemi, Finland, to modify their winter tourism away from snow reliance and toward focusing on cultural and indigenous experiences.
Moving to law, order, and public safety initiatives, Australia is responding to the tragic Bondi attack with major systemic policy changes.
Following the violence, the Australian government announced a comprehensive gun buyback scheme.
The largest since the Port Arthur massacre.
It is the largest since the landmark reforms implemented after the Port Arthur massacre in 1996. And alongside this massive buyback, they're committing to stricter hate speech regulations.
So it's a dual approach.
Reflecting a clear determination to address both gun violence and the underlying issues contributing to hate-driven behavior in public spaces.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is reacting to campus violence with a specific, controversial immigration policy change.
Following the high-profile shootings at Brown University and the murder of a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, President Donald Trump suspended the Diversity Immigrant Visa Program.
Which is commonly known as the Green Card Lottery.
That's right, the DV1 program.
Yeah.
And the suspect in the violent acts, a Portuguese national, had reportedly entered the U.S. through this program after initially arriving on a student visa.
And this decision immediately drew strong opposing viewpoints, as always happens with such sweeping immigration policy changes.
It did. On one side, you have proponents, including the Homeland Security Secretary, citing national security risks and arguing the lottery system may inadvertently allow threats into the country due to its randomized nature.
And they're calling for a security review.
They are. On the other side, critics warn that suspending the program risks racial and ethnic profiling, harms legitimate immigrants seeking opportunity, and undermines the diversity goals of the program.
It highlights that difficult balance between public safety and maintaining inclusive immigration pathways.
A very difficult balance.
Across the ocean in Bangladesh, we see extreme political and communal tensions resulting in violent unrest.
Yes, significant civil unrest erupted following the death of political activist Sharif Osman Hadi, who was a prominent youth leader of the 2024 uprising with a strong anti-India stance.
And thousands took to the streets.
Thousands gathered in Dhaka and Rajshahi, leading to large-scale protests, vandalism at newspaper offices, and chaos.
And compounding this, there was a separate and tragic incident of mob violence.
Yes. A Hindu man named Dipu Chandra Das was lynched by a mob over blasphemy allegations in the Mymensingh district. Both incidents just highlight the highly volatile political and communal climate in Bangladesh right now.
Now, to perhaps the most anticipated release of documents in recent memory, the U.S. Department of Justice is set to release thousands of files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. This has been called a long-delayed reckoning.
It is a critical moment for transparency and accountability concerning the intersection of wealth and power. The U.S. Department of Justice is set to release thousands of documents related to the Epstein investigation, promising to shed further light on his extensive network of high-profile connections.
And the breadth of his alleged abuses.
Yes, and even before this comprehensive release, documents unveiled by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee gave us a disturbing preview.
And those preliminary details were already deeply unsettling.
They included highly disturbing materials like photos of women's passports, chat transcripts, and unsettling quotes from the novel Lolita Inscribed on a Woman's Body.
Just horrific.
Furthermore, Newly released images involving Noam Chomsky, the prominent scholar, have reignited public discussions about the breadth of Epstein's network across academic and elite circles.
This persistent drip of information just fuels widespread demands for accountability and judicial transparency regarding those who associated with him.
And it's not going away.
These files remind us of the immense power of digital information, but sometimes a single viral video can completely derail an individual's professional and personal life, even without any criminal elements involved.
That is the incredibly challenging story of HR executive Kristen Cabot, who spoke out after being featured in an infamous kiss cam clip at a Coldplay concert with her boss.
And what was intended as a lighthearted, fleeting moment was weaponized by the internet.
It morphed into a source of severe personal and professional fallout for her.
What was the specific fallout she described that highlights the toxic nature of this digital exposure?
She was inundated with a relentless barrage of abusive, threatening, and harassing messages online. She suffered significant mental health distress, and ultimately she was forced to seek new employment opportunities entirely because of the damage to her public reputation.
Her experience just highlights the severe, involuntary consequences of going viral and the destructive, toxic nature of online harassment.
It can permanently destroy a professional reputation and personal peace in minutes.
To end this section, let's go back thousands of years for an incredible piece of archaeology that challenges long-held historical assumptions about enduring religious identity.
This is a beautiful and significant finding from Jerusalem. Archaeologists unearthed an exceptionally rare 1,300-year-old lead pendant.
And it features a 7-branched menorah.
A menorah, yes, found beneath the Temple Mount in the Davidson Archaeological Park.
That date is crucial, 1,300 years ago, placing it deep within the Byzantine era.
Precisely. It places the pendant squarely within a time when Jewish access to Jerusalem was heavily restricted and often officially prohibited due to anti-Jewish edicts.
So the existence of this powerful symbol of Jewish identity in this sensitive location, it suggests something important.
It suggests that despite official exclusion, Jewish religious practices and continuity persisted clandestinely in Jerusalem, reinforcing the narrative of an enduring connection to the Holy City throughout periods of official suppression and exclusion. What stands out when we try to synthesize all of these sources is the sheer magnitude of the shifts happening simultaneously.
Right.
We have cosmic structures being revealed by light-years distant collisions and groundbreaking biological breakthroughs offering pathways to health span extension.
And yet, here on Earth, our core global narrative is defined by breakneck technological acceleration, demonstrated by OpenAI's massive $830 billion valuation goal.
And at the same time, systemic political fragility, highlighted by the deep EU divisions over Russian assets and the U.S. immigration policy pivots.
And underpinning all of that is the profound environmental stress. Glaciers melting at an unprecedented rate, methane plumes undermining global climate targets, and catastrophic floods hitting vulnerable communities.
It feels relentless.
The global economy is reacting with sharp policy pivots, like the Bank of Japan's rate hike, and extreme consumer caution, as we saw in the German savings surge and the UK retail slump.
It truly is a moment defined by extremes, extreme wealth, extreme risk, and extreme discovery. It creates a sense of systemic complexity and vulnerability across the board.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to navigate this complexity? We covered so many complex global crises, but the sources offered one tiny, unexpected nugget from the health and science field that might connect to something much larger than just biology.
You're referring to that highly interesting study on cognitive decline and altruism, which we touched on earlier in Section 1.
Yes. Researchers found that dedicating just a few hours a week to helping others, engaging in volunteering or even informal acts of kindness, can significantly slow cognitive decline, improve vitality, and maintain better brain function.
And the biological mechanism appears rooted in reducing loneliness and increasing beneficial social engagement, which in turn reduces systemic inflammation.
It suggests a profound link between human connection and fundamental biological health.
Exactly. And if the solution to some of our most complex biological problems, like cognitive aging and vitality, is rooted in something as fundamentally human and accessible as altruism and connection, this raises an important, provocative question.
Which is?
What other large-scale crises might be solved by a return to simple, community-focused action and reciprocal human behavior, rather than solely relying on complex trillion-dollar policy shifts or advanced, opaque technology?
A thought worth taking with you as you navigate the complexity of the world and seek out those local connections.
Indeed. We hope this deep dive provided you with the clarity and insight you needed to connect the dots between the stars, the algorithms, and the global shifting alliances.
Thank you for joining us.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.